When we were getting ready to, and I want to tell you, where's Clifford?
I'm right here.
Where? I didn't see you. All right. Cliff gets a lot of credit for this. I mean, he has worked his off. And I thank him, and I'm sure you do too, and you may not know it. In addition to that, John and Don have been most helpful here. I mean, it's like every weekend or so is, do we need to come up this weekend? I said, yeah, that'd be real nice. No problem. Nancy and Andy. Nancy. And sorry about that. And where did Dan stay?
He just left.
I'm gonna kid him. Okay. He has thoroughly enjoyed this reunion because it's been great. He's got to come over and he's got to supervise all the yard people and do this and do that, and he said it's wonderful and I don't even have to pay him. So he's had a large time with that. But in addition, the main thing we want to say is thank you all for coming. We are delighted that you're here. We're just happy as we can be and hope that we just can all get together and praise the Lord that everybody had a safe trip and that you'll all have a safe trip home and we'll get back together. But when we were planning this, we were talking about what we wanted to do and we wanted to do. And I'm going to have to give, again, credit where credit's due. Buster came up with the name Zephie Zingers because I told him kind of what I wanted to do and he said, you mean kind of like Zephie Zingers? I said, oh, yeah, that's wonderful. And Mother and Aunt Jack tried to die over this thing and afraid that we were going to be disrespectful and we were going to do this, that, and the other, and I...
Explain to him who Zephie is.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. She said explain to him who Zephie is because some of them may not know. Zephie Phillips, well, that's what this is all about, Mother.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, she's their mother. These three ladies right here, Zephie West Phillips is their mother. So she's either the mother, the grandmother, the great-grandmother, or something of most of us in this room. And we also have some new cousins that we didn't know we had, so I want to introduce those right quick. This is Frances Griffin. Raise up, Frances. Just raise your hand. Her sister, Muriel Rowe, and another sister, Lois Lawler. So we're really excited to have them join us this year.
Thomas.
And, excuse me, Thomas. I wouldn't forget you. But anyway, just to, what we had in mind was that there were a lot of people that do not either remember or never did know Zephie West Phillips. And we thought it was, since she's the reason that we get together every year, and it started by all of us seemingly going home the first weekend in May for her birthday. And then after she died in '64, everybody said, well, the kids said, well, we still need to get together. And so that's what this is all about. And in discussing it again with Buster, he said, well, Peggy, are you going to write a little biography about her? And I said, no. He said, well, you need to. And about 3 or 4 days later, I thought, I'm going to kill Buster. Not particularly a good writer. And then in trying to gather information, and I wasn't smart enough to call Jen Illo, our resident genealogist, and of course Frances has helped me a lot. So I hope that what I tell you is factual. It may not be. There is a question about George Phillips' birthday. So we'll settle that after this is over. But anyway, I do have a copy of all this. I would just like to read this and set the tone. And if I can have you little girls' attention, but I know it's hard. Okay, this is what I wrote is about Zephie West Phillips, the light of our lives. Zephie West Phillips was born on May the 1st, 1879, to Nathan Plimpton West IV and Susie Charlotte Davis West, the fourth child of 8, born to Dr. and Nathan Plimpton West III and Amanda Evans West of Milan, Texas. Nathan provided for his wife and family of 5 children working as a carpenter in Geneva, Texas. In 1895, Mr. Nathan West decided to move his family to the new town of Manny, Louisiana, located just across the Texas-Louisiana borderline or state line. He loaded up his wife, Susie, and his children, Zephie, Herbert, Nathan, which is often called Buddy, Willie, and Vera, in a wagon and settled on Caldwell Hill just about a half a mile from downtown. The Wests were one of only 5 families that populated Manny at the time. So see, they just Right, you know, one of the very founding fathers.
Pioneer.
I'm sorry?
They were pioneers.
Thank you. But things did not go so well for Mr. West. Shortly after moving his family to Manning, he fell off of a house and broke his back and or his hip. And I'm sorry, I don't know which, because some people say back, some people say hip, and some people say both, so whatever. This accident left him crippled and later totally bedridden until his death in September the 9th, 1936. To make matters worse, Susie Charlotte had not been well either, apparently suffering from TB and unable to attend to her family. Susie died on July the 4th, 1924. At the age of 12, Zephie became the mother of her younger brothers and sisters. This caretaker role followed her all of her life. With only a 5th grade education, Zephie was adept at cooking, sewing, writing, and her grammar was above reproach. I'm sure you all remember that. Zephie was the original Miss Manners. If you were ever around her, she'd take your feet off that. Don't do that. Quit smacking that. Pull your hair back. But that's the way she was. Before she was 20 years old, she joined the First Methodist Church of Manning, Louisiana, and that was in 1898. Zephie West married on December the 21st, 1902 to George Wesley Phillips. Instead of a wedding ring, Mr. Phillips made and gave Zephie the famous Zephie pin that she wore every day for the rest of her life. And Ruth has that pin and she brought it, so if any of you would like to see it, well, she has it with us today. George was one of 8 children born to Jesse and Margaret Sullivan Phillips. George was 20 years older than Zephie, and he was born on June, this is where I'm not sure it's correct, June the 21st, 1858. George was a widow with 2 small children, Albert and Leela, who had been living with an uncle and aunt. Thaddeus Oliver was his name, and Phillips, T-I-L-A-T-H-I-S? Talitha. Is that how you say it? Well, I'm probably going to call her Amy. Okay, her maiden name is Cooley. Granny always said that one of the reasons that she married George Phillips was so that she could have the 2 children, Albert and Leela. But they had been living with Uncle Thad and his wife for so long, and they had no children, by the way. Uncle Thad didn't. And so he would not allow Albert and Leela to go and live with Granny and Mr. Phillips. But later, when those kids got in high school, they did go and stay with her so that they could go to school. From 1904 to 1924, so that's 20 years if you can imagine, George and Zephie had 6 children. They are George, who was born on January the 28th, 1904. Bill, which we call Willie, was born August the 16th, 1908. Inez. You want me to read this? No. Hey, you ought to be real proud.
You should have it.
Well, we can't help it. Okay. Inez, but January 29th, 1913. Francis, January the 15th, 1915. Susie Margaret, that's you. Okay. August the 6th, 1918. And Ruth. I'm sorry, I didn't know her. Mary Ruth.
I named her to her.
August the 1st, 1924. All of the children were born in Manning, Louisiana. In addition to having these kids, Granny also took care of her daddy and then her younger sister Vera and her younger brother Buddy. And it was during this time that my mother, Margaret Percival, remembers Mr. West working in the garden, so that would be her granddad, working in the garden while he was on crutches. And that Granny used to fix lunch for Buddy, and he was kind of like a Pony Express, you know, he delivered the mail and those kind of things. And so, and one of his favorite meals was a baked potato, and Granny used to worry about him choking to death on this baked potato because it was just a dried baked potato. And anyway, most of the time Granny was healthy, aside from the bunions on her feet. I don't know if we want to raise our hand about how many of us inherited that. She was rarely ill. Ruth Phillips Gleason remembers Granny Zephie saying the reason she had bunions on her feet was because that she was so poor when she was growing up and she never had shoes that fit her correctly. When Ruth was just a baby, Excuse us, we had just one little moment. Okay, when Aunt Ruth was a baby, Granny became ill with what was, I believe that she was diagnosed as having arthritis. After going to the doctor and And the problem was that she couldn't raise her arms, and she was kind of somewhat crippled. But doctor said that the reason that she had this condition was because of her teeth. So she had all of her teeth pulled, she got much better, and then she could attend to her family once again. But anyway, during all this time, her husband, George Phillips, provided for his family doing what he did best, which was watch repair. He owned and operated a store on the main street of Manny, Louisiana. Business was pretty good up until shortly after the big stock crash in 1929. And then during the Depression of the mid-30s, Mr. Phillips began to drink rather heavily because he could no longer pay for his bills. And he could no longer provide for his family. And it came to a really sad time where he lost his home. And I don't know if any of you remember Granny talking about her home on the boulevard, but that's what she called it, the boulevard. And she was very proud of her home on the boulevard, but they lost that home. And I think Mr. Phillips probably couldn't stand it because he was very proud to have the house there. It's the house where Ruth was born, I know. You were born in that home. And he just couldn't take that. And being the strong woman that Granny was, I think she issued him an ultimatum, as the story goes, and it kind of said, quit drinking or don't come home. And he said, adios, sayonara, goodbye. I'll see you. I'm going to go live with Albert. Now, they weren't separated in the today's sense of the word, separated. He just lived with Albert, and she lived there. And
Peggy, which George are you talking about? I lost it.
George Wesley.
George Wesley.
George Wesley. Oh.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so George Wesley Phillips stayed with Albert until he died on August the 15th, 1945. After he died, after 1935, Granny Zephie had several homes, and she lived with Aunt Jack for a while. And then I think she just got up one day and she said, I'm going home now, and off she went. And then she lived with Uncle Francis for a while, and then pretty soon she decided she wanted to go back to Manny, and that's what she did. It didn't take her very long to find a home. She found one on Louisiana Street, and the first home that they rented was right next to Mr. Hooley's store. I don't know how many of you remember Mr. Hooley's store. The grandkids probably do. We went there all the time. And then later, and I believe she rented that from Judge Hill. Had those rent houses along that store on Louisiana Street. But later she bought the house that we all remember going to, which was just down the street. I would say that Granny Zephie had the determination of a fire ant. She worked in sewing room with the WPA, which is the Works Progress Administration. Her salary was $20 a month. Mother was working at the local Justice of the Peace, and later Aunt Ruth went to work at the Fort Pope, and all of the children chipped together and helped her pay the $40 a month house note. In later years, her children were married. After her children were married, Granny kept other children, and she also rented her front bedroom. I don't know if you remember that when we went there, and she always had the front. What was that music teacher's name? I can never remember that. I should have, but she rented it, and she was right across the street from the school, so the school children could come over to her house and take music lessons from the teacher that she rented. On August the 31st, 1964, Granny Zephie announced for a second time, I'm going home now. Leaving 6 children, 31 grandchildren, and 29 great-grandchildren, Zephie left this life to live in a beautiful mansion on the boulevard, made of gold. And now she sits up there, I'm sure on the right hand, or maybe he does, I'm not sure. That's not disrespectful, I love it. But I'm sure that she's up there serving our Lord that wonderful strawberry shortcake that she always made that was just too good, melt in your mouth, that I can never duplicate, try as I might. Or that vinegar pie, do you remember it?
Yes.
Nancy said, it doesn't have any peaches in it. I don't care what you call it. Not peach cobbler. Doesn't have Granny told her it's vinegar pie. Okay. Anyway, that's what this is about. We just want to talk about Zephie. We just want you to share with all of us what you remember about her. And these are some things that through the years that I have heard about her or that I've observed. I find that she's very fair. She was always very, very fair in doing the right thing. And when Uncle Thad and his wife died, they left some property, and I'm not sure exactly who they left it to, but she made sure that that property went to Albert and Leela, who they had raised. And then later Oral was struck. Eventually Oral was struck on that property. She was faithful. She was faithful to the Methodist Church. She was faithful to her family, and she was faithful to her friends. One of her friends that I remember the best is Mrs. Clara Knott. Now, Miss Knott had two claims to fame. As far as I was concerned, the most important thing about her was that she had a goldfish pond in her backyard. I'd never seen one. And we used to walk from our house, where Granny lived on Louisiana Street, from her house, to the boulevard where Miss Knott lived. And we would have tea in Miss Knott's backyard, or they would, and I would sit around and play. But her other claim to fame was that she was Huey Coulon's sister. So that was, you know, some people thought that was more important, I'm not sure. Yes, yes. She was sincere, she was caring, independent, relentless, hardworking, dedicated to her family. What you see is what you get. She had a way of what we would nowadays say cutting through the mess and get right into the heart of the matter. She just cut the chase. She never minced words. She was consistent in her beliefs. She was decisive, and she was invincible. When her children visited her in the summer, there were two picture shows in Manning. And we had to walk to the post office at least once, but sometimes twice a day, because they put they were more efficient back then than government was. So they would put the mail up more than once a day. Her box number was 365, in case any of you have accidentally forgotten that, because if you made very many trips. But at night, we would walk to the picture show, and she had her little flashlight. I don't know if you remember.
Yes.
You do? Okay. And so that was one of the
She'd
things.
say, "Don't hold me, I'll hold you."
but she had this little flashlight, and we would go up to the picture show and back to the picture show with this little flashlight. And she was the light of our lives. And that's what we want to talk about. Okay? So who wants to go next?
I do.
Okay, come on. Oh, we don't have time to talk.
My favorite story about Granny Phillips has to do with her independence.
Can't hear you. Get closer.
Okay. After she got older, the children began to worry. These three and the brothers began to worry about her living alone. Those of you who remember the house where she lived, the back steps were, as a little child, they looked like they were 40 feet down. I'm sure they weren't more than 6 or 8. But they were worried that she'd fall out the back steps, or that she'd faint or hit her head. You know how you worry. So they would, from time to time, try to hire someone to stay with Granny Phillips. And the children would go on Sunday and hire the lady, and then Granny would fire her on Monday. So one last effort was going to be made. They all went to Manning, had the woman all lined up, and Uncle George said, now, I've forgotten her name. Anyway, he said, I have hired you. I'm going to pay you. Mother cannot fire you, no matter what she says to you. We want you to stay here. They said, I understand perfectly. I have dealt with older people, and I understand about this, and I will indeed stay here. Everybody went home Sunday afternoon late. Monday afternoon, the lady called Uncle George and said, Mr. Phillips, would you really want me to stay here? And he said, I told you yesterday, of course I want you to stay there. Why would you ask? Well, Miss Phillips got up and got on the bus to back with
Don't you have one?
Well, I just remember things about her, like I thought scraping was a process in making the toast. But somebody told her it was good for her, so she got little teeny jars, squeezed all the juice out of the watermelons, put the juice in the little jars, and kept them in the freezer in her refrigerator. Smart.
And then
Then she had watermelon juice all year. I guess she got her vitamins or something. But she was wonderful, and she loved me.
Yes, she did. And she did. Who else? Now, I'm sure that Buddy and Laura and I are not, but Nancy, where are you? Do you want me to tell yours or can you get it?
Have anything to do with Dudo?
No.
Well, I too have a lot of fond memories of Granny. This one incident kind of sticks out in my mind, and then Peggy kind of helped me with the details. But anyway, she came to visit us one time, and usually she would plan to stay 2 or 3 weeks. We were lucky if we got her to stay 2 or 3 days. But this one time when she was there for the weekend, and at the time I was dating a guy that just came home on the weekends. He was away during the week, so we just saw each other on the weekends and spent quite a bit of time together. And as most of you know, her ideas about boys and dating were quite conservative. And some of you may know that at our house, with 3 girls in high school, there was a lot of that going on, boys and dating. So,
Not conservative. Well, fair enough.
so like it was on Sunday, Uncle George and Thelma stopped by, and Mother was making some introductions, and she got around to the gentleman I was dating, and she said, "Now, Mother, you remember Glenn, don't you?" She said, "My God, I should. He's been here ever since I have." That's kind of how she felt about that. The other thing I want to say is, when I do think about her, I really remember what a strong person that she was, and that was a characteristic that, you know, she showed in many ways of being strong in her beliefs and strong in character, defending her children who she loved. And I just want to say I have seen that in her children. I've observed it in all of y'all, and have admired it.
when you said relentless.
The relentless.
I got a little bit of it.
You said a lot of it.
But I do want to say that that is one of the things that I admire most in my mother. And I want to thank Granny for that.
Mother, do you have any?
Where's my mother?
Oh, no, but can I tell what she told Daddy when... This is just too funny. I was hoping that he would stay so he could tell this, because he tells this quite frequently about her. When, I hope I'm telling it, I may get a little bit mixed up, but when he went to, did he go to ask permission to marry you? Just to tell, y'all went in to tell? You had already told. You were leaving to go get married. And she said, do you want to tell this, or you want me to?
Well, that's my story.
That was Papa that just called on the phone, and he asked what we were doing, and I told him that we were telling stories about Zephie, and he said, "Well, I'm sure somebody will there tell about the time that I went to get married to go get married." So he knows that we're all going to get to tell this story.
I think her words were something to the effect of, well, I don't like it because I don't like you, but probably, well, that's what she didn't say that. She didn't say that. Okay, what did she say?
Tell the story, Granny.
She wanted them to get married in May. And Dan said, "No, we're going to go to Beaumont and get married." And she said, "All right." And she took them to the door, and she shook her fist in Dan's face.
You can hear this, shook her fist in Dan's face, and I bet he weighed 250 pounds, and she was not big.
And she said, "If you ever mistreat her, I'll
Scratch your eyes out. He has never forgotten. If you ever mistreat her, I will scratch your eyes out.
You see why Dan treated her?
Yeah, right. Well, he has not forgotten it, I can guarantee you that. He certainly remembers it. Buddy, do you have another one? Anything? No?
No, she does too.
Well, you tell it, Jen. Yeah, you
Well,
tell it.
I just remember hearing the story.
Well, good. It's even better the second time.
I obviously wasn't around yet, but Mother used to tell me that when Granny Phillips would come and live with them, she was dating and people would call and ask for Buddy. she didn't like for you to be called Buddy,
Mhm.
Right.
and she'd tell them nobody named Buddy lived there and hang up.
Well, as Nancy said, she really was not too fond of the courtship stage. And I remember one time, and you have to understand that Mother and Daddy made us be home at 10 o'clock. And that didn't mean 10 o'clock sit out in the car. You know, that meant 10 o'clock in the house. But every now and then we could stand just a few minutes on the step and kiss or something. But this particular time, that's exactly where I was, standing on the back step, just smooching up with this guy. And if any of you have ever seen Driving Miss Daisy, when Jessica Tandy comes down those stairs with that hair sticking out 9 ways from Sunday, that's about what Zephie looked like that night. I mean, her hair was sticking out like this, and she jerked up at that door and she said, "Boy, was you planning on staying for breakfast?" No, ma'am, I'm leaving right now. And she said, "Well, it's time." And so that was, I said, "I'm coming right in, Granny." But, I mean, when I say she didn't mince any words, she did not mince not anything. Would you say that's a pretty fair assessment of your mother? But she was fair about it, and she was, you know, very firm. Buster, you have anything?
Well, I'm still waiting to find out about your debut with the postman while staying in her house.
What you got there?
Oh, this was, I should have not told you that story.
Let him tell it.
Well, I
I
tell
can
you
add
what.
some things if you want me to.
No, it's bad enough on my part, just whenever I tell it. You're talking about the
It may be
postcard?
bad, but I really enjoyed it, and you concluded with a good positive lesson from it.
Okay. Once when I was staying with Granny, and I don't remember exactly what it was probably was that I didn't get to go to the picture show as often as I thought I should, because I was about 9 or 10 years old. And so I was kind of angry with her something. I don't know. I don't even remember what it was. But I had written a postcard to Mother, and it was something to the effect, "Come and get me. I hate this old woman." And I'm not staying here. I mean, that's exactly about what it was. Well, not being extremely mature, I don't know if I gave it to her to mail or if I just put it in the thing for her to mail. But I can remember sulking and laying across the bed in the front, you know. And she came in and she threw that postcard down on the bed and she said, "Do you have anything to say to me?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't mean for you to write." But what I was telling Buster, what I learned from that little incident was that if I have a problem with somebody, then I don't need to go tell 9 million other people. I need to take it to the person that can do something about it. And I mean, and that's when I learned that lesson when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And it's been a great experience for me. But anyway, I will not hog the mic. I am through doing my thing, but anybody else is welcome to do. I just remember that I forgot.
When they get to a point where you're through, I want to say a couple of things.
Okay, well, come on up.
No, I want to say.
Oh, she's loud
They're
mouthing
not
up.
through
Let
yet.
her.
What about okay? I mean,
They must have go to my car and
Well, may not be able to hear you.
Sure, let's start.
Hey, Jack,
you wouldn't know what to
I
do.
think they ought to have
I think I'll go do it.
Here she goes. Wait,
They're going to. Oh, I'm gonna miss something. I want to go get that. The Bible, old Bible record of all the children. It shows his birthday. It's in a car somewhere. That would be good. Yeah, but-
Suggest they get off.
I don't want to miss them.
Okay, hey, Jack.
They need to.
Yeah, why don't y'all all two get up there and you can help each other out.
See, that's how reluctant they are.
Peggy, why don't you get the 3 sisters to get up there together?
I need a little support.
That's right.
While y'all are getting up there, I'd like to know if your mother ever traveled anywhere with a real suitcase, or if she always had a cardboard box and a paper sack.
No, ma'am, she had a suitcase.
and usually with some garden peas in there somewhere.
Well, so that was a cousin who lives in Shreveport talking about the bus. I wrote her, that's Uncle Herbert's daughter. And I called her and asked her, you know, we were having a reunion and she'd come to my house on Friday and drive down. And she really wanted to come, but she told me she's old, said she was 80. I don't think that's true either, but anyhow, her husband is kind of crippled. And he was willing to bring her, but he wanted to bring her down, stay with his meeting, and then drive back. So she couldn't come. And I had told her we were going to, you know, something funny she remembered about Mama. And of course, when Mama took a notion to go somewhere, she packed that bag, and Lorene and Bud, Uncle Herbert's son, the one that was killed while visiting me. But anyhow, she'd go see Lorene. And she, I guess maybe because she was a good customer, but when she decided to go somewhere on the bus, she called the bus driver and said, I'll be out front, you pick me up. She didn't go to the bus station. The bus picked her up. But when she'd go to Laura, she wouldn't even call her and tell her she was coming. But the Mansfield Road went by into Shreveport and Laura, she'd get off the bus at Lorene's house and took this suitcase down a couple of blocks, wasn't it? And she said if she'd have just told me about it, of course I didn't drive, but I had, the kids had a big red wagon. And I could have met her, we'd have put her suitcase on the wagon, but she came. And I knew she did pretty often, because when she got ready to go home, the Shreveport bus wouldn't pick her up. So she'd call me, I'm ready to go home, come get me. But y'all just made me cry. She was, absolutely. Boy, she was tough and strict, but a wonderful mother, man. We can't do that.
I think she ought to get that.
It's my duty to introduce.
I think
Well, I have helped raise this one, and I raised this one, and I really thought she belonged to me, and she hated her name, Mary Ruth. But that was Mama
give you a hard time.
let me name her. But anyhow, they're wonderful people, and I'm so sorry that Francis can't be here. And Charles called from Germany, 2 o'clock in the morning. He said, Aunt Jack, please tell him that we would have been there if we could. But he's there for a year, I think, and maybe going to stay next year because it would be his turn to have the reunion. So that makes it our turn. And they have voiced they'd kind of like to go back to the lake. And I would love to have them at the lake, but we don't have anybody that can cater like these rich folks.
They did all right.
Yeah. So I think I'll have my grandsons to cater our supper, and they can charge y'all what they think they can charge. Or I have thought about leasing a boat and taking you on a tour down Sabine River.
Oh, come on.
If you ride a
But
fire
I
truck.
let me introduce the guests, and then we have some, of course, we introduce those, but we have some other guests that this is their first Phillips reunion. And I'm not smart enough to remember their names, but would you please stand and introduce your guest? Now, Meg has a guest. That's his first turn. Where is Meg?
Is Tim Heffernan?
I'm Kim.
We've met Joe before, and there's someone else here with the guest.
Actually, I have 2 guests.
Okay.
Don in the back, Don Anderson in the white shirt, who's been tremendously helpful. And I might add, if any of y'all noticed the signs when you're talking, Don did the signs.
Come on again.
And his daughter, Jennifer. How's your hand doing? Yeah.
Tell about the watermelon today. That
I
was
know,
a picture.
picture.
I took 2 pictures of it.
And he did the watermelon and he made the apple bird.
And birds out of apples can
Would you believe it?
Okay, now does anyone else?
Yes, Andrea does.
Who does?
Andrea? Did you want to introduce?
Steve.
Hello, Felix.
If he comes often, we'll break him in. He didn't say a word, he just... Yes. Now, Terry, haven't you been here? Okay, we're happy. See, they fall out, but they always come back. And who else do we have that has not attended a Phillips reunion before? Yeah, we introduced them. Okay, then I'm gonna resign.
Wait, no, you're not. Wait. Sorry. As just a little special gift for each one of y'all, we have something, just a little memento, but we're going to present, Nancy and John are going to present y'all with yours. You're going to get a little prize. And we have one for everybody. And it says, Zephie West Phillips, the light of my life. Oh,
Thank you.
so when y'all go walking to the moon, without flags to me, please.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. With all my stuff.
Well,
Jen's taking our picture.
Oh.
Okay, Ruth has got the top. Okay.
No, I don't talk. I don't talk.
I just wanted to say what a great lady my mother was. She was, and I was the youngest, and I was at home the longest. And I had to go to that post office twice a day to get mail from these guys. She wanted to hear from
Post office wasn't.
When you're little.
Oh, and y'all, I was so impressed. They called it the P.O.
And talking about her coming for a visit, she would pack up and come, and I know several times Ray would go get her. She's going to stay 2 weeks, 3 days. She had to go back to Maine. I mean, that was it.
And if you wouldn't take her, she'd pick them up.
That's right. She would.
That post office is across the street from Zephie's house now. The new post
Yes,
office.
wouldn't that have been wonderful? But it was down at
Brand
the end
new.
of the main street.
Well, now they may have to across
But talking about the high steps going down, whoever mentioned that, when Ray and I were going together, we went, I was 18 and we were going together just a very short time. This was during the war. And we married right away pretty soon. Well, instead of going to Camp Coke as it was in those days, once or twice when he'd come for a date, we had the extra bedroom in the back where Grandpa was at one time, and so he would sleep overnight and stay there. So the first time he did this, she was up early and went out the kitchen door onto the little porch, and the door to that bedroom was open, and she looked in, and he wasn't there, and she said, "Ruth, your soldier has flew the coop." She looked down, he was out there smoking a cigarette. So that was one of the things that was, he always loved to tell like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she's proud of it.
Yeah. But she loved her children and her grandchildren. Just unbelievably. They were just all there was to her. She was a great lady.
And I think the other thing that I remember about her, I mean, we always say that, you know, when she would come to stay, she wouldn't stay very long and she'd want to go home.
Right.
Part of that, I think, was she didn't want to ever be a burden on anybody. Because I can remember, the one story that I remember was that when I was really, really little, they called and said she was in the hospital. I think maybe Aunt Jack called and said they would put her in the hospital. So, of course, Mother got us all up, you know, we're going to go to Maine. It was a big ordeal, drive, right? Well, because Granny's in the hospital. Oh, we were all, Granny's in the hospital. You know, how long has she been in there? Oh, she's been in there 2 days. And I can remember getting there, and I was just like, oh, she's in the hospital. It was a really serious thing. And we went up, And Mother asked for it, and they said, oh, she checked herself out.
Well, you know, when Dan and I would have an argument, you know, and I insist on having my way or something like that. He'd say, you're just like your mama. So, about 10 years ago, and when he said that, I said, I wish I would have woman sheep. And he hadn't said it.
And he told me that story the other day. That you said that.
But I brought the first reunion picture. Anyhow, she was at my house and she had a heart condition. And of course, she was raising the roof to go home. And one time, I just flatly refused to take her. And I have wonderful children, and I have wonderful son-in-laws. And she didn't do a thing in the world but call Buddy's husband, George, and say, they won't take me home with you. It wasn't 10 minutes till he was over there. But this time, it was in August, I guess. She was not well. No, it was earlier than that. And I called Margaret. She just was undone. And I thought, and now I understand it. My house is the prettiest house, the best house in the world. But she said, I've got to go home. And I called Margaret, and I said, Margaret, I'm going to take her home. You meet me at Milam, because I don't want to do this by myself. So Margaret met me. We took her home. She went through that house like a buzzsaw, got on that telephone, called her friends, and they were over there, and she made coffee. And these steps are, I know they're 12 feet. And I thought, well, I told Margaret, I said, if she goes in the yard, falls down those steps and can't get up, one of her friends will find her. So, anyhow, that's...
Well, you know, we all went home at one time. We made a special, all of us together,
we
to
did.
tell her that this is it. We
Yeah.
have to do something.
Yeah.
And she felt it, I guess, and she said, I am not leaving my house. So that was it.
Well, Marcia and I went on Saturday. Of course, she stayed at home. I worked every day, had Wednesdays off, and I don't think I ever missed a Wednesday. I'd call her on Tuesday night, and I'd say, Mama, I need to do so-and-so. I'm not coming tomorrow. She'd call me Wednesday morning and say, I'm just sick. So I went back to my
Well, you know, one time when she was in the hospital, George was over there.
Yes.
And you maybe said that you couldn't come or something. So she was complaining to George about you, just didn't know. He said, I tell you what, Mama, says, why don't you just disinherit her? Oh, my goodness.
I really believe I waited on her. But anyhow, she was not well. And Marcia and I went on Saturday because she had agreed, her doctor was Dr. Swaff, who we all grew up with, and she thought he was the only doctor in the world. And he had called her and said she was not well and needed to be in the nursing home. So she agreed she would go, he was going to go, when he left work, pick her up, take her to the nursing home. It was out in the heart of town where he lived. Then when he went to work the next morning, he was going to stop at the nursing home, pick her up, and take her back home. Well, now, you can't beat that. But anyhow, we went, and she was in the bed, and she had not eaten. And I asked her what she'd like to have to eat. It must have been about 3 o'clock in the evening, and she said she wanted some cornbread. So I went in the kitchen and made the cornbread, and when I came back, she was having a seizure. Well, of course, I tore to the phone and called Swell and told him, I said, she's had a seizure, come quick. So he came quick, and when he came in, he said, you're crazy. She hadn't been, by that time, she got enough oxygen and was talking to him, and he said, you're just mistaken. About that time, she had another one. I said, I'm not mistaken. He said, no, you're not. So we took her to the hospital, and I called them on. Y'all all came, and couldn't find Bill, but everybody else, of course, came. And did she die that night?
No,
The next.
We were there 2 days.
Yeah. And of course, Ruth had to go back home. She didn't dress. She didn't bring the
Had kids at home.
Yeah. But anyhow, Oh, she gave us a hard time. We didn't brag on her, but she did.
How old was she?
She was 85 on the birthday that she had. It was May the 1st, she was 85, and she died that August.
Well, when you said you called SWEP, are you talking about Dr. Frazier?
Uh-huh.
We grew up with him.
We grew up with him, and Mama half raised him. She used to
She
babysit.
loved him,
Yeah, and she,
I thought he was my mother's age.
huh?
I thought he was older than y'all. He was your age?
No, he's Bill's age.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's older than you, about 2 years.
He
Bill
died
Horn.
within the last year, but he and the brother just older than I am, he and Sweat were best friends. And of course,
She really depended on you.
she depended, but it was the only doctor in the world.
Well, it's only a doctor here.
Huh?
She was really the only doctor
Okay,
here.
y'all ready to stretch a little bit and then we can get back together? I want to give you
I just wanted to tell y'all while y'all were still out
Okay,
here.
Francis?
I have a little piece of old Phillips Bible that shows the 8 children's birth dates. And it's written by the mother and father, whichever one wrote it. It looks like it might have been the father. Jesse Phillips wrote it. And it shows the birth dates of all the children. And it shows George Wesley, my son George Wesley, W-S-L-Y, born in I think it was 1852.
Do you have a son named George Wesley?
No, I have a little piece of the Bible of your grandfather. Of your great grandfather. That shows, and it's out in the car. I'm gonna have to go find it. George Wesley's Bible? No. I'm talking about Jesse Phillips's Bible.
No, we
I
have.
just want you to know that y'all are welcome to stay as long as you like. You can visit as far as programs, not us. Okay.
Tommy, go with me. Let me find that.
I just want to say, Peggy talking about how much help Nancy and John has given. I just want to say, we couldn't have done without Peggy. She's a